The air crackled with tension as Karen strode into the quiet cafe, her sharp heels clicking against the hardwood floor. All eyes turned to the well-dressed woman as she approached the counter, her face etched with an entitled sneer. "Excuse me," she demanded, snapping her fingers at the barista. "I've been waiting for my coffee for 10 minutes. Where is it?" The young barista, her eyes wide with trepidation, stammered, I'm so sorry, ma'am. It's coming right up. We've just been a bit busy this morning." Karen scoffed, her lip curling in disdain. "Busy? That's no excuse for this kind of incompetence. I have a very important meeting to attend, and I can't be kept waiting like some common peasant." Suddenly, a soft voice spoke up from the corner. "I'm sorry, but I've been waiting longer than you. Perhaps we could all be a bit more patient." All eyes turned to the woman who had dared to challenge Karen's outburst. It was Emily, a kind-hearted regular at the cafe, cradling a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. Karen's eyes narrowed as she regarded Emily, her nostrils flaring. "And who do you think you are? This isn't your business, so I suggest you keep your mouth shut." Emily's cheeks flushed, but she refused to back down. "I'm simply asking that we all be treated with respect and consideration. There's no need for this kind of behavior." The tension in the room thickened as the other patrons watched the exchange, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Karen's face twisted into a malicious grin, and she leaned in closer to Emily, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, I see. You think you're better than me, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, _dear_." She paused, her eyes glinting with a cruel amusement. "I am better than you. I'm better than all of you lowly commoners, and I won't be lectured by some insignificant nobody." Emily's expression darkened, and she opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a new voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think it's time for you to leave." All eyes turned to the cafe owner, a tall, imposing figure who had emerged from the back room. His brow was furrowed, and his jaw was set with determination. "I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in my establishment," he continued, his voice firm and authoritative. "You are disrupting the peace and making my customers uncomfortable. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen's mouth fell open in shock, her face flushing with indignation. "How dare you? Do you have any idea who I am? I'm a very important client, and I demand to be treated with the respect I deserve." The cafe owner remained unfazed, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "I don't care who you are, ma'am. In this cafe, we treat everyone with kindness and respect. If you can't do that, then you're not welcome here." The other patrons began to murmur in agreement, their expressions a mix of relief and admiration. Emily, in particular, looked up at the cafe owner with grateful eyes, her lips curving into a small smile. Karen's gaze darted around the room, her confidence visibly wavering as she realized she had lost the support of the crowd. She opened her mouth to argue, but the cafe owner raised a hand, silencing her. "I'm not going to ask you again, ma'am. Please leave, or I'll have to call the authorities." For a moment, it seemed as if Karen might defy him, her eyes narrowing with defiance. But then, something in her expression shifted, and she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Muttering under her breath, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the cafe, the sound of her heels echoing through the silent room. A collective sigh of relief swept through the patrons, and the cafe owner stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I apologize for that unpleasant display," he said, his voice calming. "Let me get you all a fresh round of drinks on the house." The crowd erupted into applause, and Emily found herself surrounded by a chorus of voices, each one expressing their gratitude and admiration for her bravery. As the cafe owner bustled around, refilling mugs and handing out pastries, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and satisfaction. She had stood up to Karen's entitled behavior, and the community had rallied behind her. But just as she was about to take a sip of her coffee, a disturbing thought crossed her mind. What if Karen wasn't done with her yet? The rest of the day passed uneventfully at the cafe as the patrons settled back into their usual routine. Emily, still somewhat shaken by the confrontation with Karen, found herself glancing out the window every so often, half expecting the woman to reappear and resume her tirade. As the evening wore on, the cafe began to empty, and Emily decided it was time to head home. Gathering her belongings, she made her way towards the exit, her mind still preoccupied with the events of the morning. But as she stepped outside, she was met with an unexpected sight. Karen, leaning against the wall of the building, her arms crossed over her chest. "Well, well," Karen drawled, pushing herself upright and taking a step towards Emily. "If it isn't the little do-gooder who thinks she can tell me what to do." Emily's heart quickened, and she instinctively took a step back, her grip tightening on her bag. I'm sorry, but I don't want any trouble. I was just leaving." Karen's lips curled into a malicious grin, and she took another step forward, invading Emily's personal space. "Oh, I think you _do_want trouble, my dear. You see, no one humiliates me and gets away with it." Emily's mind raced, trying to come up with a way to diffuse the situation, but the fear was evident in her voice as she replied, "I didn't mean to humiliate you. I was just trying to stand up for myself and the other customers." "Stand up for yourself?" Karen scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "You're _nothing_, do you hear me? Nothing but a pathetic little nobody who thinks she can tell her betters what to do." Emily could feel her heart pounding in her chest, and she desperately searched for a way out of the confrontation. But before she could respond, a familiar voice called out from across the street. "Is everything all right over there?" Both women turned to see the cafe owner, his brow furrowed with concern as he approached them with a cautious step. The cafe owner's arrival seemed to temporarily diffuse the tension between Emily and Karen. Karen's expression shifted, a hint of uncertainty flickering across her face as she realized they were no longer alone. "Everything is _fine_," she snapped, her gaze darting between the cafe owner and Emily. "I was just having a friendly chat with _her_." The cafe owner's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, his imposing presence casting a shadow over the two women. "It didn't look very friendly from where I'm standing. In fact, it looked like you were harassing my customer." Karen's jaw tightened, and she straightened her posture, attempting to regain her composure. "Harassing? Hardly. I was simply having a _civil discussion with this young woman. There's no need to make a big deal out of it." Emily could feel the fear and anxiety building within her, but she also sensed a glimmer of hope as the cafe owner continued to defend her. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, ma'am. I won't tolerate any more of this kind of behavior around my business." For a moment, it seemed as if Karen might defy him again, her eyes narrowing with defiance. But then, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, and she appeared to reconsider her options. Letting out a frustrated huff, Karen turned to Emily, her lips curling into a sneer. "This isn't over, _dear_. You can be sure of that." Without another word, she spun on her heel and stalked away, her heels clicking against the pavement. Emily watched her go, her heart still pounding in her chest, a mixture of relief and trepidation washing over her. The cafe owner placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right, ma'am? I'm sorry you had to deal with that." Emily nodded, her voice trembling slightly. I'm fine, thank you. I'm a little shaken, that's all." The cafe owner offered her a sympathetic smile. "I understand. Why don't you come back inside and have a cup of tea? It's on the house." Emily hesitated for a moment, her gaze drifting back towards the street where Karen had disappeared. But then, nodding gratefully, she followed the cafe owner back into the warmth and safety of the cafe. As she sank into a comfortable chair, sipping the soothing herbal tea, Emily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this wasn't the last she would see of Karen. Over the next few days, Emily found herself constantly on edge, her mind consumed by the memory of her confrontation with Karen. She couldn't shake the feeling that the entitled woman was still out there, plotting her revenge. As she went about her daily routine, Emily found herself glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see Karen lurking in the shadows. The once peaceful cafe had become a source of anxiety, and she found herself making excuses to avoid spending too much time there. One afternoon, as Emily was browsing through a local bookstore, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Her heart leaped into her throat as she recognized Karen, striding through the aisles with a determined expression. Quickly, Emily ducked behind a nearby shelf, her mind racing. What was Karen doing here? Was she looking for her? A sense of dread washed over her as she contemplated the possibilities. Gathering her courage, Emily carefully peeked out from her hiding spot, only to see Karen engaged in a heated conversation with the store's manager. The woman's voice was sharp and demanding, and Emily could tell that the manager was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Unable to resist the temptation, Emily inched closer, straining to hear the exchange. "And I demand that you remove that filthy display from your window immediately," Karen was saying, her voice dripping with contempt. The manager, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Ma'am, I apologize, but I'm not sure what you're referring to. Could you please explain the problem?" Karen's eyes narrowed, and she gestured towards the front window, where a small display of LGBTQ+ themed books and merchandise was prominently featured. "That display. It's an abomination, and I won't have it in my community. You need to take it down, or I'll make sure your entire business is shut down." The manager's expression shifted from confusion to outrage, and he straightened his posture, his voice firm. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. This display is an important part of our commitment to diversity and inclusion. I won't remove it just because you find it offensive." Karen's face flushed with rage, and she leaned in, her finger jabbing the manager's chest. "Then you'll be sorry, Mr. I had a lot of influence in this town, and I will make your life a living hell if you don't do as I say." Emily felt her stomach churn with a mix of fear and disgust as she watched the exchange unfold. She couldn't believe the lengths that Karen was willing to go to in order to impose her narrow-minded views on the community. As Karen stormed out of the bookstore, Emily emerged from her hiding spot, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. It was clear that Karen was not going to give up without a fight, and Emily knew that she needed to do something to stop her. But what could she do? And more importantly, how would she handle the impending confrontation with this unstoppable force of entitlement and malice? In the days that followed the disturbing encounter at the bookstore, Emily found herself increasingly consumed by a sense of dread and determination. She knew that Karen's relentless campaign of intimidation and harassment could not be allowed to continue unchecked. But the prospect of standing up to such a formidable foe was undoubtedly daunting. As she grappled with her own fears and uncertainties, Emily began to find solace in the unexpected support of her community. Word of Karen's entitled and discriminatory behavior had spread, and the townspeople were rallying together in a collective act of resistance. One evening, as Emily sat in the cafe nursing a cup of tea, the cafe owner approached her with a solemn expression. "I've been hearing some disturbing things about what's been happening," he said, his voice low and grave. "I want you to know that you have my full support and the support of this community." Emily felt a surge of gratitude and relief, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she managed to utter, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know what to do. Karen is so powerful, and she's not going to stop until she gets her way." The cafe owner placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're not going to let her win," he said, his jaw set with determination. "This is our town, and we won't allow someone like her to come in and try to dictate what we can and can't do." In the days that followed, Emily found herself surrounded by a growing network of allies, all of whom were equally outraged by Karen's actions. Neighbors, local business owners, and community leaders began to come together, sharing strategies and ideas for how to confront this threat. One particularly heartening moment came when Emily attended a town hall meeting, where she was met with a standing ovation as she shared her story. The mayor, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for being tough on injustice, stood up and declared that the town would not tolerate any form of discrimination or harassment. "We are a community of diverse and vibrant individuals," she proclaimed, her voice ringing with conviction, "and we will not be bullied or intimidated by those who seek to impose their narrow-minded agendas upon us." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, and Emily felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. She knew that the battle against Karen would not be an easy one, but with the support of her community behind her, she was ready to face the challenge head-on. As she left the town hall, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and empowerment. She may have been just one person, but together with her neighbors, she was a force to be reckoned with. And she was determined to use that power to take down Karen, once and for all. The day of the big community event had arrived, and Emily could feel the nervous energy pulsing through the air. The town had come together to organize a celebration of diversity and inclusion, a direct response to Karen's attempts to marginalize and silence the LGBTQ+ community. As Emily made her way towards the town square, she couldn't help but feel a sense of apprehension. She knew that Karen would be present, and the prospect of confronting the entitled woman once again filled her with a mixture of dread and determination. When she arrived, the square was already bustling with activity. Vendors had set up colorful booths, offering a wide array of goods and services, while performers took to the stage, filling the air with music and laughter. Emily scanned the crowd, her eyes searching for any sign of Karen. It wasn't long before she spotted the woman, her elaborately coiffed hair and designer outfit standing out like a sore thumb amongst the vibrant diversity of the event. Karen was standing off to the side, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mix of disdain and irritation. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the inevitable confrontation, and made her way towards the woman. "Karen," she said, her voice steadier than she had expected. Karen's gaze snapped towards her, her eyes narrowing with recognition. Well, if it isn't the little troublemaker herself. I should have known you'd be here, stirring up more problems." Emily refused to be intimidated, her own eyes hardening with resolve. "This isn't about causing problems, Karen. This is about our community celebrating its diversity and inclusivity. Something that you seem to have a real problem with." Karen let out a derisive snort, her lips curling into a sneer. Diversity and inclusivity. What a load of nonsense. This town was perfectly fine before all of you. Deviants started crawling out of the woodwork. Emily felt a surge of anger, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Deviants. How dare you speak about our community that way? These are our friends, our neighbors, our family members. They deserve to be celebrated, not demonized. The crowd had begun to take notice of the confrontation, and a hush fell over the square as people turned to watch the exchange. Karen's gaze swept over the crowd, her expression darkening. "So, this is how it's going to be, is it? You think you can just rally your little army and push me out? Well, let me tell you something. Emily. I'm not going anywhere. This is my town, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let a bunch of freaks take it over." Before Emily could respond, Karen suddenly reached into her purse and pulled out a small object, brandishing it menacingly. "And if anyone tries to stop me, they'll regret it." The crowd erupted into gasps and cries of alarm as they realized that Karen was holding a gun. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as the crowd stared in stunned silence at the weapon in Karen's hand. The air was thick with tension, and Emily could feel her heart pounding in her chest, fear and adrenaline coursing through her veins. But just as Karen was about to take a step forward, a voice rang out from the crowd, strong and unwavering. "Drop the gun, Karen. This ends now." All eyes turned to the source of the voice, and Emily felt a surge of relief and pride as she recognized the town's mayor, her own firearm drawn and aimed at Karen. "You don't have the guts," Karen sneered, her grip tightening on the gun. "I know how this town works. You won't do anything to stop me." The mayor's expression remained steely, her finger poised on the trigger. "Try me," she said, her voice laced with warning. Sensing the shift in the mood of the crowd, Karen's confidence began to waver. The people she had once thought were powerless were now standing united, their faces etched with determination and resolve. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted from the edge of the crowd, and Emily turned to see a group of police officers pushing their way through the throng. "Drop the weapon and put your hands in the air," one of the officers shouted, his own gun raised and trained on Karen. Karen's eyes darted frantically from the mayor to the police, her expression a mix of panic and disbelief. Realizing that her plan had unraveled, she let out a frustrated scream and raised the gun, pointing it directly at Emily. But before she could pull the trigger, a deafening shot rang out, and Karen crumpled to the ground, the gun clattering to the pavement. The crowd erupted into a collective gasp, and Emily watched in stunned silence as the mayor lowered her weapon, her face etched with a grim determination. "Nobody threatens my community," the mayor said, her voice laced with a quiet fury. As the police swarmed in to secure the scene, Emily found herself surrounded by a crowd of supportive onlookers, each one offering words of comfort and solidarity. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the town began to heal, the community rally serving as a cathartic moment of triumph over hatred and intolerance. Karen's downfall had been a harsh but necessary lesson, a stark reminder that a town's strength lies not in the hubris of a single individual, but in the resilience and unity of its people. And for Emily, the experience had been a transformative one, forging within her a newfound sense of purpose and empowerment. She knew that the battle against entitlement and bigotry was far from over, but she was ready to face it head-on, secure in the knowledge that her community had her back. As the sun set on the town square, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future. The path ahead might not be easy, but with the support of her fellow citizens, she was confident that they could overcome any challenge that stood in their way.